Happy Tuesday. Look at that. We made it to the last Tuesday of October, Pearson.
Yeah, it some days feel like it, and other days it feels like this year has gone by way too quick.
Yeah, way too quick, but we are ready for 2025, especially if I can make it through my words. But we are all here for the Rig on Wheel show. I am your host, and this is featuring MVT. I am your host, Kameel E Gaines. And of course, here is our favorite VP of recruiting over there at Priscilla Valley, and that is Robert Pierson. We all that love him call him Pearson. And this is your only and favorite truck driver recruitment show where we talk about your trucking insights, tips, news, all the great news and the bad news, but tips, hot jobs, and we're going to just make history and start talking about some good stuff. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about rates first.
Yeah, rates have gone up. We're not sure if it's going to be seasonal or if it's going to be short-lived and being influenced by the hurricane. Right now, looking at the spot market, we're looking at about 202 a mile, contract rate at 242. Again, during the good times, generally that spot market rate ends up outpacing the contract rate. The contract rate being higher, though, as there are shippers that are paying for premium service. However, with that said, 202 is definitely up. Glad to see that. That's encouraging to see that up. I can tell you that at this moment, if I look at it here, and my new phone's a pain to work with, but I'll get better at it. I can tell you that we saw increases here along the way. Let's see, van rates were up 6.1%, reefer rates were up 10.1%, flatbed had a penny jump. Those are huge numbers, especially for the time of the year. We do see freight increase as we go into the Christmas months, however, not necessarily to that extreme over a 1 week period of time. It may be somewhat influenced by the hurricane, but I'm not so sure on that being the case. If you look at the rates in more detail, we're averaging a buck 88 coming out of the southeast, $1.90 out of the south central U.S., Midwest at 220, 186 out of the northeast, and 210 out of the western 11. So I don't know that it is all Hurricane Milton related when you consider that we're still sitting at a buck 88 coming out of the southeast. So a lot of people are pointing at Milton. But again, we aren't seeing it out of the southeast like you would expect that to be the case. 220 a mile is not necessarily a surprise in the northwest or in the Midwest, excuse me, as Chicago is the largest freight market in the country, generally alongside with the port of LA. I do know that a lot of companies having trouble getting trucks out to LA. Freight is definitely picking up off the coast. We've seen the Western 11 rate pick up to 210 a mile. That also gets influenced by drivers willing to get back cheaply into the Western U.S., especially if they're involved with the harvest. So as we have harvest season picking up, especially for reefer trailers, you will see a lot of play on that rate in the Western U.S. So it's one of the things to keep in mind. Not only do we have Christmas hitting, but we also tend to have the reefer rates end up hitting there pretty quick. By the way, I'll look at the reefer rates real quick. If you look at the reefer prices coming out of California as an example right now, boy, it's like an 11-to-1 truck to trailer ratio out of California on the reefer side. So that's not necessarily a surprise. And if you look at the rates out of the Western U.S., we're now sitting at about 248 a mile on the reefer side. So that would indicate that the harvest season in California is definitely playing an influence. I would honestly give the harvest in California more credit than I would Milton based off of what we're seeing regionally.
I just want to pretend like I'm an economist right now and say that 2025 is looking good.
I will say this: if you're in the world of trucking and you don't pay attention to the economy, What are you doing? The economy is definitely, we are influenced greatly by the economy. And so, if you're a driver, an executive, a leader, or just a follower of the industry, having a basic understanding of the economy becomes very important because you are in an industry that is the ultimate barometer for how the economy is doing. Generally, we see how the economy is doing 6 months before a lot of the economists do.
Yeah, definitely. And we saw that talking about COVID. We knew something was happening before we knew it was really on our soil. And then talking about diesel, it inches up a little bit, 2 cents. It inched up, so we are averaging. When we talk about diesel, I didn't look at the gas, everybody, but diesel it inched up 2 cents, so we're at 3.57, $3.57, not 3.3 $3.57 a gallon for diesel, and so that's a fifth increase in the last 6 weeks, but that is 88 cents less than this time last year. So I just kind of want to throw that out there. Any other news out there that we want to talk about?
Yeah, I think Bob Costello, he tends to be the main economist for the American Trucking Association.
Mhm.
He had a pretty good speech he gave at one of the conferences here recently, where he kind of talked about giving a 12-month outlook. The drivers of trucking freight are going to get a little bit better, and what he was pointing to is the fact that the number of drivers and trucks that have been taken off the road, the newer trucks that have not been brought on the road in the same pattern. What will ultimately happen is he envisioned that the next 12 months will be a gradual climb up. It won't be steep, and we want to get that magic bullet. Probably won't be the magic bullet, but he's projecting over the next 12 months that it will be an ongoing and continued graduous climb. I think that would be encouraging. Beggars can't be choosers. We don't want to go downhill. We'll get through the lull of the election. Most likely, November and December will be quite robust just because of the time of the year that it is. And I think basically on his look on it is that 2025 will be one that literally month over month, you're just going to feel it get a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better, to where December should feel like a world different compared to January 25.
Well, I'm just excited. I'm excited for everything to come. I'm really excited for November 6th. I'm telling you about that. But I really am excited for everything that is to come. That's for sure. If there's no other news, that I definitely want to jump into these hot jobs because
Yeah, we got some exciting jobs here, and I'd say let's jump into it. Vanna's got everything lined up here. I don't know that we're a good substitute for Pat Sajak, but let's look at some jobs.
okay, so let's go to the first commercial first, Vanna White.
Yeah, let's do the commercial.
My name is Stacy Morton, and my position is OTR driver. And I've been with the company for 8 months. I enjoy being with part of the family because good miles, uh, nice people. They listen to the drivers. The pay is excellent here at MVT. The home time is very good. You get to go home anytime you want. The dispatchers are really nice. They listen to the drivers, whatever you want. They will do their best to give you what you need. And the equipment is good, and safety is excellent. Yeah, they're fast, and the roadside is good. They listen to you, and they get the job fixed in a timely manner. Yeah, I would recommend other drivers to come to MVT because this is a good place to work, and you get excellent home time and everything that you need here.
Welcome back, everybody. Okay, now Vanna could throw all of the jobs up there.
Let's talk about Division 430, one of my favorite divisions. It's a stress-free division with Hurricane Milton coming through Florida here. We work with about 60% of the freight on this division is Lowe's. Lowe's most likely will be very busy for the coming months as they do the recovery Out of Florida, I would see Division 430 staying quite robust for the next 6 to 12 months because of that, as well as other factors. A lot of stress-free driving on this. A lot of I-10 going from Jacksonville to Houston, Houston down to Laredo and back again. If you live out of Jacksonville, you know the routine. Most recruiters are trying to get you to go up I-95 towards the northeast, or up 75 and then splitting into 85 as you go up towards Atlanta, having to deal with 285, which if you've ever driven around Atlanta on 285, you hit Atlanta at the wrong time of day and it's like a parking lot. 12 to 16 lane parking lot going in both directions. You don't deal with that with this division. You do a lot of I-10. Your only traffic spot that you're really going to hit along the way is Houston, and if you time that out correctly, you should be able to keep on going. A lot of drop and hook on this. Need about 20 individuals that we can have join the company over the next 2 months for Division 430, averaging $1,100 to $1,300 a week, home every 4.5 days. Really fun division. We have about 65 individuals on this division at this moment. Very low turnover rate, so the people that are on it love doing it, stay on it for a while. We opened this division about 3 years ago and still have about 20 people that joined us 3 years ago and just have stayed on this division. They like what it is and how it operates. So a great opportunity here with Division 430, what we call South Texas Regional, Jacksonville to South Texas Regional. If you tell your recruiter 430, they'll know exactly what you're talking about. Can we go to the next one, Kayla? Let's talk about Division 410. Really fun division out of Nashville, Lexington, and Louisville, Kentucky. We do a lot of Midwest and Southeast freight. A lot of drop and hook opportunities. There's some productivity bonuses available that your recruiter can tell you about, averaging about $1,650 a week, or anywhere between $85,000 to $90,000 a year. This division, shorter length of haul. You're never too far from home. God forbid something happens, we can get you back when life throws a curveball at you. But on the flip side of the equation, plenty of miles available, plenty of opportunity, a lot of drop and hook, and a lot of long-term customers that we have on this. So we have about a dozen customers that you're going to see very routinely on this and stay busy with this. Additionally, I point out some drivers like this, other drivers don't. I always point out with this, it's a lot of nighttime driving. There's a lot of drivers that prefer to drive at night because there's fewer cars on the road. So a lot of times on this, 4 out of 5 days, I'll tell people you're driving at night, which gives you the opportunity that there's a lot fewer vehicles on the road, that you're sharing the roadway on this. Very fun division. We're looking to grow this division probably about 20, 25 drivers over the course of the next couple of months. So we have the openings. For those of you that live in Nashville, you love this division. You do orientation right where you live. Orientation is held in Nashville every Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, Friday. We generally do a $500 orientation pay. So if you commit to a date, you come on the date that you commit to, we pay a $500 orientation for that 2-day orientation. So if you live in Nashville, it's a nice paycheck for 2 days of orientation, because we want you to continue to make the money that you'd expect to make if you were running freight up and down the road. With that said, again, we hire out of Nashville, Lexington, Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky. A lot of openings on Division 410. Kayla? And last but not least, we have a couple openings right now. We are hiring specifically out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Salt Lake City, Utah for Division 220. This division averages anywhere between $1,500 to $2,000 a week. Top 10% on this division's averaged over the last 12 months, $106,000 a year. The challenge with this division, it's a lot of mountain driving, but that's why these folks make six-figure incomes in this role. We are fully set up, great network of support if we run into any mechanical issues with the trucks on the road, which we normally don't. But with our relationship with Penske, you're always safe while running the Western 11. You'll see a lot of markets like El Paso, Southern California, Salt Lake City, Phoenix, Albuquerque, Colorado Front Range, and Portland, Oregon, as well as some other locations with some customers that we've had long-standing relationships with. This division has openings, though, so if you're out of Salt Lake City or out of Albuquerque, we could use about 10 to 15 individuals on Division 220. Really good dispatchers. Most of the dispatchers on this division have at least 5 years of experience. So you also get to deal with dispatchers that know the customers well, know the lanes well, do a lot of good job, a really good job in terms of planning their drivers 3 to 4 days in advance. So you know where you're going to go, when you're going to get home, what you're going to do. Generally home every week. A lot of opportunities on this division. 220 is one of my favorite, not just because of the money, but they tend to also have the most senior dispatchers and fleet managers that are going to make sure that you're successful in the long run. And like all of our divisions, our fleet manager's financial success is based off of your financial success. Literally, we tie those two things together, and it tends to make for a better relationship. Orientation in this division would be out of El Paso, Texas, most likely. Again, another 2-day orientation opportunity, but we'd go ahead. Salt Lake City is a long ways to take a Greyhound. We'd most likely be flying you into orientation so that you can be comfortable, well rested when you get ready to road test and then ultimately do orientation. So if it's Division 220, 430, or 410, we have a lot of divisions to talk about. So if you didn't see the division that fits you or where you live, call the number on the screen at 281-968-3100. That's 281-968-3100. MVT has a lot of other markets that we hire out of, but the Rig on Wheels folks also have about 40 other clients. So I can hire out of markets that you saw listed here, but you may live in Pocatello, Idaho, or Miami, Florida, or Atlanta, or Chicago, or Amarillo, Texas. There's probably some place that I might not be able to hire you. Hopefully I can call you a coworker, but if I can't, Rig on Wheels has about 40 other clients, and they're going to ask you what your wants and needs are, what your background is, and what you're ultimately hoping to find, and place you in the place that's going to be best for you long term. You're not looking at your next 90-day stop, but where you're going to spend the rest of your career with a career development path in place. Again, that's 281-968-3100, and if you can't call, you can always visit 24/7 online at rigonwheels.com, rigonwheels.com. You can get that cool calendar that's behind Kameel's shoulder, or look for your next driving job at rigonwheels.com.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for that, Pierson. And also, what I wanted to say is, like Pierson says, these are the hot jobs that we have for MVT right now. But there are always other jobs that we have for MVT. So if you call in and let's say this isn't the job for you, but there are other positions, they could have 10 other positions or other openings that could fit. And the internal recruiter that we work with, Josue, might once we turn in your application, there sometimes is another opening as he's talking to you that he might suggest for you as well. So keep that in mind. As our whole thing for you is to get you in the best position for you and your family. So always keep that in the back of your mind. So give us a call at 281-968-3100, 281-968-3100, and like Pierson says, go directly to the website at rigonwheels.com. So what I want to do now is, we normally do this at the end, but I want to go ahead and have the commercial with Joe so he could talk about the ins and outs of the truck, because MVT's truck is very large. The cabin space is really large, which is great because we have some guys that are tall, so it's not a cramped space. And then after that, I want to kind of ask Pierson some questions that he normally asks me, but I know certain things have changed since Pierson has been VP, so I do want to ask him some questions as well. So we're kind of excited about that because we got some new listeners that said that they were going to be listening today. So because they haven't recruited for MVT in quite a few years, I want Pierson to be able to explain certain things to them as well. So let's go ahead and have Joe do his thing on the commercial, and then once we come back, we're going to do some rapid fire with Pierson.
At Mesilla Valley Transportation, every driver is behind the wheel of a late model International LT, a truck that takes comfort, convenience, and safety to a whole new level. Join us as we explore the impressive features of this powerhouse on wheels. The open road is full of surprises, and sometimes that includes unexpected encounters with wildlife. But worry not, the International LT has you covered. The front end protection guard offers an extra layer of defense, protecting you from animal strikes. Drive with confidence, knowing that you're shielded from the unexpected. We all know how important it is to keep our batteries charged, and our International LTs have your back. The Cummins X15 is equipped with an auto start feature, ensuring that your batteries are automatically recharged when they run low on volts. It's a seamless process that keeps you powered up and ready to hit the road. Disc brakes and an engine brake provide reliable and safe stopping power when you need it most. You can have peace of mind knowing that you're in control. Safety is at the forefront of what we do. Our International LTs are equipped with top-of-the-line safety features to ensure your well-being while out on the road. These tractors are equipped with Bendix fusion protection, collision mitigation, and lane departure warning. Achieving good fuel efficiency deserves recognition. With the International LT, your efforts don't go unnoticed. When you consistently achieve impressive miles per gallon, the International LT rewards you with increased speed. It's a little extra motivation to keep you pushing for better fuel economy. After a long drive, you're ready for a well-deserved break. With the International LT, you can enjoy your rest period in absolute comfort. Thanks to its auxiliary power unit, you can keep the driver's cabin heated or cooled just the way you like it. No matter the weather outside, you'll always find your sweet spot within our International LTs. The International LT understands that comfort extends beyond driving. It's a space where you can truly feel at home. I'm a big guy, and I have room to move around in here. With plenty of room to spare, the International LT accommodates even the tallest drivers. And there's ample storage for all your clothes, cooking essentials, and tools, making life on the road even more convenient. Speaking of cooking, bring along your appliances and don't sacrifice any luxuries thanks to all of our International LTs being equipped with built-in inverters. Dry your hair, make a smoothie, or play a game, all from the comfort of your truck. We take pride in our well-maintained fleet, and if by chance you do come across something wrong on your truck, you're never far from help thanks to our valuable relationship with Penske. With more than 750 brick-and-mortar Penske shops nationwide, their expert team is always ready to assist you. From routine maintenance to unexpected repairs, they'll get you taken care of and back on the road in no time. And there you have it. Just a few things about this late model International LT that make MVT the place to be.
We're back. Welcome back, everybody. Okay, so now this segment, what I want to do is Pierson normally asks me these questions because Rig on Wheels represents quite a few different companies. So we're able to talk to different carriers as well as place drivers with different companies. So it's a little bit different. However, Pearson's is able to just, what would you say, just represent just MVT. So you're only able to just deal with that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, ignore that. Just fire away. Let's hear what you got.
Okay. So let's see. What is the biggest shift that you've seen in the last few years?
That's a good question. So I will say that there's a difference in driver if they worked prior to COVID than if they started their career after COVID. Your drivers that worked before COVID have kind of been through these cyclical changes that trucking has been through. And so we have seen that the recruiting process tends to go easier with those drivers. The drivers that have not been through the cyclical nature of trucking and got into it when freight was through the roof in 2012, it's got to be much more of an educational conversation. And so we try to have that longer conversation with drivers. And look, I don't promise somebody, hey, you join me in 2 years from now, you're going to be a millionaire. I'm very realistic with our recruiters. The partnership that I have with you guys at Rig on Wheels, we set very realistic expectations of what you can make, what your life's going to be like, the good, the bad, what a good week looks like, what a bad weeks look like. We kind of need to be more detailed on that. The less experienced driver that's wanting, to run dry van, never touch any freight, has no endorsements, but wants 80 cents a mile because it existed in 2022. That driver is struggling because they kind of thought that was just normal. So as a recruiter, you tend to do a lot more in the way of educating your driver, especially your less experienced driver, than you normally would. The other part of this that's a bit of a challenge here is we are much more, I guess the right word is there's a lot more in the way of regulations or legalities we have to work around now at this point that often confuse drivers, like the clearinghouse, like the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Why do I have to sign all this stuff for you? It's stuff that as recruiters, we have to do a really good job of remembering, hey, I need this from you for this for this, which can make it somewhat challenging for a driver that's talking to 8 other companies. It's the appeal of a rig on wheels, as an example, of why they would go through you. You get to have one conversation instead of having 8 conversations and filling out 8 hour-long application processes. You're able to have a much more detailed discussion as a driver, but that's changed a lot over the years. The other part I'd part to, and probably the biggest third, is that schedule is really important. Drivers want to make money, but they got to have a schedule. They got to know when they're getting home. Ideally, they want Monday through Friday. That does not always exist given the nature of the industry that we're in. But drivers, I can tell you that 10 years ago, as an example, it was always pay. It was always literally going to be about pay. It's not the case anymore. I want to say that probably more than 2/3 of the individuals I talk to, if your pay is not bad, it becomes schedule. It is literally about schedule. It's why we focus on specific lanes. It's why we focus specifically on knowing when you're going to get home, pre-planning 3 to 4 days in advance. Because if I just send a driver out for a couple weeks and say, "Hey, good luck to you, pal," that driver's not going to stay.
Are you looking at my notes here?
No, but you and I probably tend to think a lot about this same stuff.
I'm like, what is going on here? But yeah, absolutely. And also, the industry has done a shift and the driver has changed, but also it's a different generation out there that's driving.
Well, the age of the drivers changed a lot. You know, pre-COVID in 2019, the average age of a truck driver was 56. Today, the average age of a truck driver is 47. That
Mhm.
9 year drop is a huge drop. Now, you had a number of folks that were over 65 that got out of trucking when COVID hit. I completely understand it.
Yeah.
We didn't know a lot about what was going on when COVID happened, but we did know that if you were an older individual, you were more susceptible to side effects from it. So we had a large percentage of people that were over the age of 65 that left our industry. In 2021 and 2022, we had a lot of newer drivers join our industry. The average age of a student last year was 38. That's also down. It is good to have this fresh new blood in our industry, but the challenge with that comes down to is that it doesn't sound like it, but a 56-year-old and a 47-year-old are very different spots of their life.
Yeah,
That
it's a
50
different generation.
It is, and that 56-year-old's much more focused on retirement and setting up the next
Mhm.
20 years in their next chapter, where that 47-year-old tends to be right in the thick of life, has expenses, probably a couple kids that they're responsible for, a spouse that they're might be a contributor to the household income, but that 47-year-old is in the middle of the dogfight that is adulthood. And so we have, as an industry, to focus on the fact that there's fewer hobbyists and much more people that this is who they are. This is their profession.
Yeah, absolutely. Because what you're speaking of, I believe, is the generation X. Forget it, because you know how Google gives you all these different. But either way, like 56 and 47 are two different generations. Like 47 is my generation, not my age. Let's not be funny, but it is my generation. So what I want and need is going to be different and should be different than a average 56-year-old. You know, and that's what's happening. But a 37-year-old, 35-year-old, with their needing and their benefits, and that's what needs are, your benefits, right? How those features benefit you are going to be different. That is and so that's why the future of recruitment and how these companies are needing to recruit drivers have to be so gravely different.
It is, and we got used to it. You know, we primarily recruited boomers. The boomers are now leaving the industry,
Mhm.
and a lot of other industries. It's why And we'll go back to this. It's why, despite the sluggish economy, the unemployment rate has not gone down or gone up dramatically. Is
Hmm.
because you have a lot of boomers that are now reaching retirement, their retirement years. And the boomers outpace that next Gen X. So Gen X now is coming in and having to make up the difference at about 1.3 people versus one person.
Right.
So that's part of why the unemployment rate's artificially low despite the sluggish economy is you have more people leaving the workforce with boomers retiring. The key for us as an industry is we have to be adaptable. I can tell you that home time definitely matters more. We also have to be adaptable to the younger driver that's getting into the industry at an earlier age. We have a lot of 20-year-olds now getting into the industry. It's why at
And that's your
MVT,
Gen Zs.
yeah, it's why at MVT we allow people to be one-time trainers. So as an example, if you have a relative that just got their CDL, doesn't want to go through the traditional school onto a feeder company, get trained by somebody else, but you want to train your nephew or your cousin, you want to train your younger friend. We now have it that if you have 18 months of experience in a safe, stable work history, you can be that one-time trainer to get that person into the industry the right way with somebody that they know. Um, I can tell you that the program, if it existed 10 years ago, I don't know that it would have been utilized as heavily. Now we see 5 to 6 people a month that come in and want to be that first-time trainer for somebody getting into the industry. So it
That
becomes
is
much more common.
that is the power. That's Nimmer's next blog, and it's going to be all about MVT. So that is the power of a company listening to its generational whatever. It's a vocabulary word. I don't know it now. It'll come to me at 3 in the morning. However, if anybody knows the word that Kayla, if you know the word that I'm trying to use, just say it in my ear. But that is a company that's really listening, not using all this fancy marketing research or whatever, but literally listening. It could be listening, going to social media and literally going through the comments and listening, going directly to that's going to the streets, is going to social media and going through the comments and seeing what they're saying, because that's taking your old school tradition when your grandpa was a driver and then doing what's new and modernizing it. Because that's the truth. Like now, these young folks would want somebody that they're familiar with, but that's also tradition because back in the day, before you and I, right? So back in the day, in the silent generation, before the boomers, because my sister is a boomer, but before the boomers, that's how they did trucking. My uncles and everybody, that's how they learned, is on the farm and somebody taught them before the whole school thing. The silent generation
Yep.
is that's how they were taught. So it's coming back. You know, I like that. I like how you put that. Oh, that was good. That was really good. Um, Now, how is the current economic climate impacting the hiring at Mesilla Valley?
Yeah, we're held, our shippers are holding us to a very high standard. Now, we're fortunate. We have a lot of shippers that we have relationships going back 20, 30 plus years. But the standards of service are extremely high right now. And they can because the shipper owns that relationship and there's leverage that goes back and forth. And it's really why we enjoy more of a long term relationship because we're not trying to hold a shipper hostage, even in the good times for trucking. We want to have a partnership there. We're fortunate from that end, but it means from a driver standpoint, we have to have drivers that have that clear cut value proposition of when I say I'm going to show up, I show up. My word has a meaning to it. So, if a driver has worked someplace and got fired for late deliveries, truth be told, I'm not going to hire that person. I can't. I can't put my customer at stake. And most importantly, the 40 other drivers that are depending on a load from that customer, I can't allow that new person to come in and ruin it for those 40 other people. And it sounds like I'm exaggerating on it, but we need to be at 98, 99% on time for our customers. And so all it takes is one or two loads and your numbers are off. and there's about 10 other shippers or there's about 10 other carriers that will gladly come in and take the freight. So
Take
we
your
look for
place.
people, yeah, we look for people that have a strong basis in their word. So if you schedule orientation and show us, we can't go forward. You're literally telling you, I might show up. We'll see how it plays out. Um, we also look at it from a habitual nature, and this is where a lot of drivers will call and go, hey, what are your driver qualifications? And they want to get this sheet with this long list of stuff that does exist with your insurance provider, because you need to tell an insurance provider, hey, we're never going to hire these people that don't match these parameters in terms of getting insurance. But realistically, I tell any driver when it comes to their qualifications is don't be a creature of habit. So
So
as
as
an
an
example,
example,
if you have a speeding ticket, let's say you were 10 over, it's not the end of the world. It stinks. You make a mistake. We all make mistakes. It happens. You now have two speeding tickets. Okay. Now you have three speeding tickets. You are
Mhm.
now a creature of habit. Yeah, for most companies, you will fit into their what they have listed as their qualification guidelines. But the challenge from a trucking standpoint is you are now a creature of habit. God forbid if there was an ever an accident where, let's say, you rear-ended somebody, and then a lawyer looks back and says, well, this person has a history of going too fast and not controlling their vehicle. They have three speeding tickets and now they've rear-ended somebody. um, it puts most trucking companies in a position that they cannot defend that. They just can't.
Any
um,
aggressive person.
yep. Yeah. It's when I tell drivers and they go, hey, I have a felony, and it was an aggressive felony from 20 years ago. That does not mean you're not qualified. I will tell anybody, you're free to apply, but I don't just say it from a legal standpoint. Like literally, we're going to look at your entire body of work.
Mhm.
You can have a transgression earlier in life, but if you're not a creature of habit, meaning that it seems that you were younger, you made a mistake, you paid your debt to society, trucking will welcome you back. We'll welcome you back. We're happy to have you. You've paid your debt to society. Um, with that said, again, if you show that you have an aggressive tendency, where, as an example, at your last three employers, you abandoned the truck and walked out, and you combine that with some transgressions earlier in your career, and we start going, this is not a good relationship for them or us. They're not going to be happy with us. We're not going to be happy with them. We probably aren't going to move forward. The key thing from a driver's perspective, because you can't, every driver's body of work is different, is that driver needs to have a longer conversation. I'm not going to, depending if you're in a ban the box state, I'm not going to ask if you have a felony. I find that out after the fact. With that said, if I'm a driver, I'm very transparent. I talk about what my needs are, my wants are, and I'm fully open about my background, the good, bad, and ugly. You and I, we're recruiters. We've
Mhm.
heard it all. Trust me, a driver is not going to say something that surprises us.
Mm-mm.
Knock on wood. But most of the time, a driver is not going to say something that surprises us. If I can't hire you, I want to be able to tell you that in 5 minutes.
Literally.
Ideally, I want to know that, because your time's, it's not just my time. Your time is precious. You got to find a job and make some money. I don't want to be a barrier in you making a living for you and your family. So the flip side of that is got to be transparent and have a longer conversation. Let it all out there, both as a recruiter and as the driver.
I agree. Absolutely. You want to know very quickly, very fast. 5 minutes might be too long. Let's make it three. um, so, yeah, absolutely. Kaden wanted us to say hi to you. It's one of your biggest fans on YouTube. So, Kaden.
The feelings are
Um,
mutual.
yes. Um, what do you feel drivers are looking for in a job right now in trucking?
Consistency.
Yeah, consistent.
Consistency above everything else. Look, we all compete for the same freight. We absolutely are in the same sandbox. Any company that tries to tell you any differently is kind of feeding you something. What separates us is the type of drivers that we have. What separates us is the level of service that the shipper gets. And if you do right by both those groups, if you
you
do
do
right
right
by the
by the driver.
driver and you do right by the shipper, you can create a consistent environment that you're able to let the driver budget off of every week and every month. The hardest part right now is that paycheck where you get a $2,000 paycheck for the week. If it's followed up by $800, that person can't budget for that lifestyle. It fluctuates
Right.
wildly. And, unless you're independently wealthy, you need some consistency of knowing I can make this much per week. That consistency to match up with a set schedule of knowing I know when I'm going to get home, I know when I'm leaving, how often I'm going to get home, how long I'm home becomes really important. So it's got to be consistency, which is what we focus on very heavily here. We look, a lot of companies will talk to you about what their top 10% does or what their top 10% makes on a weekly basis. If you're just getting hired, you're not the top 10% of drivers. The first 90 days is you just feeling out your new employer and seeing if you're a fit in their operation.
I hate
One
that.
of the things that we try to do is we sit down with each of the divisions and we look at show us the bottom 20%. I want to see what the bottom 20% is doing. And that's the number that we really need to move. That's the number right there that's the big part. If we can bring up that bottom 20%, we and the driver are ultimately going to win in the long run.
Every time you talk like that, I promise you, I think you're a Virgo like myself. I mean,
Scorpio here.
I'm just every time.
I think when I was born, though, the stars were confused.
Because I'm like that, yeah. Half glass half empty is realistic to me. Um, what hiring trends do you see to be unique just to our industry?
Yeah, I will say that we as an industry struggle with relationships in an industry that is relationship based. So
Mm-hmm.
traditionally, if you are going to work at a McDonald's as a restaurant manager, or you're going to work at as a superintendent at a golf course, or you're going to be a bank teller, you tend to build relationship and really have longer conversations, get to know each other, get a feel for each other, and blend into, hey, that interview process is part of what it's going to be like to work together. As an industry, this is fast paced. There's no 2 week notices. There's literally, hey, I can get you an orientation next week. You show up, often don't even meet your recruiter, get into the industry, and next thing you know, you've started a job. And if you're lucky, you shook the hand of the person that's responsible for your financial success. As an industry, I hate that about the industry. I think we have to do a better job of focusing on building a relationship right from the get go.
Mm-hmm.
It's why we have recruiters that physically make it into the orientations, because I want you to see the person that you just committed. They're going to make a living with you. You need to look that person in the eye and be able to do that. The second piece of that equation is you need an actual true open door policy where your fleet managers physically sitting down with the driver, they're looking at each other, they're talking to each other. It's one of the advantages of our running lanes is all of our engineered lanes go through one of the terminals that most likely your dispatcher or fleet manager is located. And the reason that's a big positive is it builds that relationship. It creates obligation on the driver's end and it creates obligation on the fleet manager's end, because you're about to see each other again in another 3 days. That makes the relationship significantly more meaningful in my mind. And I think as an industry, we have to do a better job of that, because it's when we
When we
talk
talk
about
about
the
the
turnover
turnover
rate in
rate,
our industry, one of the biggest contributing factors is that the fleet manager and the driver do not have much of a relationship.
I do agree with that. We need to do better with building relationships. And this is a very, and some people think that the AIs and things like that are breaking up relationships, but I don't think so. I think technology will bring relationships together because technology will automate things where people don't have to really be there. That way, the things that automation can't or technology can't do, we will be able to do. And that will do better with building relationships. Now, somebody,
It's the technology over the last 30 years has added value to relationships. What I can tell you, if you remember in the 80s and the 90s, it was all the call centers going overseas. And that was new for both sides of the area. If you were in
Right,
India and you were in the US, it was a new experience for both people, both
right.
on both sides of that transaction. And then companies moved to more automated systems, and
Mhm,
now they've moved to AI. It
mhm.
means you have fewer and fewer of those one-on-one conversations with people. Heck, we now date now by swiping right. We have fewer and fewer of those one-on-one conversations, that when you finally do have that one-on-one conversation, it has to have meaning. It has to be significant. It has to be beneficial to both people involved. And so I think AI, I'm a big fan of it. I think it does a lot for us in many ways. But one of the things that you gotta keep in mind is there is a time that a handshake and looking somebody in the eye has even more value now than probably any time in recent history.
I'm about to scare you now. Do you know that you can have an AI boyfriend?
I actually feel a little pressure now. I don't want to get beat out by AI.
That's crazy. I was like, oh my goodness. But somebody else, Tim from YouTube, asked the question, and this is could be relative. This question is actually relative. Which region needs the most drivers? The reason why I think that's a very good question, Tim. But the reason why it's relative because it depends on the carrier, and even if a carrier is all 48 states, it kind of depends on where their shippers are.
Yeah,
It's not as if they have the same shipper all 48.
I will answer for us specifically.
Mhm.
We move about 450 to 500 loads a day across the border out of Laredo and Nuevo Laredo, El Paso and Juarez, and a little bit out of Nogales, Arizona. What I can tell you is there will always be a need for us to have drivers based in Laredo and El Paso. Kind of what you're describing, that's unique to MVT just because of the niche of the industry that we
Right.
serve. If I look at our growth over the next year, I would also list out Dallas, Fort Worth, and Houston as those two markets that I see our greatest growth. But if you put XYZ Trucking next year, they may tell you, it's Chicago and St. Louis because of the niche that they specifically serve. I will say this: if you're a driver and you're trying to pick where you want to live, and you want the most opportunities available to you, think of where the hubs are for freight. There's a lot of opportunities out of Atlanta. Atlanta is a rich market for drivers, in particular on the south side of town.
Mhm.
Um, if you take a look at it, Dallas Fort Worth, major hub for freight, good market for drivers to live if you want a variety of options and career development paths down that vein. Um, I tell people, there's some negatives to living in Chicago, but in terms of staying busy as a driver, there's a lot of freight opportunities living in the greater Chicagoland area. So you combine that with what do you want out of life and, cost of living and a whole bunch of other factors. But those are three of the markets off the top of my head that I normally would advise to drivers getting into the industry as far as from a career prospect standpoint, where they have the best career prospects. I'd probably rank it Atlanta, Dallas, Fort Worth, Chicago, as those three markets that stand out the most. But it gets really into that company by company. If you're saying, hey, looking over the next 12 to 24 months with you guys, where's a driver going to be successful? It's always going to be El Paso, Laredo, Houston, DFW are probably the markets I would point to as the biggest growth opportunities. And DFW, at any given time, we have 8 different divisions that operate going in or through DFW at any given time.
Now, since you're VP of recruiting, and I think YouTube has deemed me or crowned me the expert of all things felon, um, I want the drivers to kind of hear it from you. If they have some S on their jacket, and what can they do to rebuild themselves?
The biggest thing in your life that you can do, we look at some point, we all make mistakes in life. Some of us got caught, some of us didn't. Some of us, our transgressions weren't going to cost us career wise, others, they were directly going to. I tell any prospective candidate that I talk to, even if it's not, when I say prospective candidate, it might be that you're not a candidate today, but you're going to be for me 5 years from now, as an example, is do not be a creature of habit. Make sure that no one can say you did it twice or 3 times or 4 times. The challenge when you go down that pathway is in most occupations, you're allowed to have one. There are some exceptions. If you got caught with corporate embezzlement, you're probably never going to be the CFO of a company. That opportunity, you don't hire your CFO who has embezzlement in the background. If you have misuse of pharmaceutical products, your career as a doctor probably is not going to take place just because those two things are too closely together. The thing with trucking that we generally refrain from as an industry is anything of a violent nature, and especially that you repeated it and you did it again and again. So it's hard when you get a felony. I've talked to a lot of individuals in a number of different career paths that when you get a felony, your life does change and you now have a very different life potentially. The key on it is you don't want to be a repeat felon. The repeat felony you'll see a dramatic shift looking at social economics and what people make on a yearly basis. It's normally a person with 2 or more felonies that they start into a lot of issues depending on their career path that they've chosen. So when you have one, the key is to get a job. Get a job, get employment. Do not be too picky or too selective, and take advantage of the opportunity. As time goes on, other opportunities will start to open up to you because the longer that felony gets in the past, the more the industry will generally open up to you. I can tell you, I know of individuals that 30 to 40 years ago had a murder conviction. They were young. They got into a fight at a bar and someone died, and they have a murder conviction. They do have opportunities. The next 20 years for them are going to be very challenging once they get out of jail, but they can get themselves back to where they're with general society and making a difference. The key is, whatever it is, pay your debt to society and understand, be humble, work your way back into it, and do not let it be a repeat offense. The repeat offense is what will change your world dramatically. And as I point out to drivers, the industry that you're in will impact how much a felony charge or any type of crime impacts your life. If you're a driver and you have a DUI or DWI, it has a really big, significant impact on your life. If you are a YouTuber and you have a DUI, depending on what content you make, it most likely has very little impact on your life. We can talk about things being fair or not fair, but it's because of the line of work that you're in that you're judged differently and the impact is different. So the thing to keep in mind, and I tell anybody this, is as people, we don't always do a good job of thinking about tomorrow, thinking about the next day. We tend to be more in the here and now, and that often is what gets us into trouble. Have a long-term, you get into that situation, and you need to lay out for yourself a long-term 20-year plan of what you're going to do to get yourself back into the position where you need and want to be.
Thank you. That is probably going to definitely help a lot of people. Now, with saying that, one of the biggest things that I really, really, really love about MVT is that they do not just celebrate driver appreciation on just a couple of days in September, even though September is the best month of the year because of my birthday, but it is celebrated quarterly. So if Kayla can definitely put on the commercial of either one of the commercials about winning the car and driver appreciation, that would be awesome because I really want to show that before we leave. Before we talk about that commercial right there always makes me so hungry. I just, you all just go all out. I love it. But William on YouTube, Martinez said this, and I say this all the time. It's not just honesty; it's transparency. To me, transparency beats out honesty, and let me show you how. Just really quickly, if Pearson's wife says, "So, did you see Lisa?" That's a yes or no. However, if Pearson just comes out and tells his wife, "I saw Lisa," that's transparency. So that's the reason why transparency trumps, no pun intended, but it's more important um, than honesty. So I think him being a driver, he's right. Transparency is so important, and he was bringing that into the conversation when you were talking about consistency.
It absolutely is. I can tell you when you're dealing with somebody that's clearly a salesperson and they get vague and aren't real specific on things,
Mm-hmm.
that's a red flag. It doesn't mean that they're lying to you, but when that vagueness can sometimes be just as bad as a lie. I rather us go into the relationship very eyes wide open. My objective here, I do not. I'll word it this way: I don't give my recruiters commissions based off of the number of people that are sitting in the orientation class. We don't do that because that's not their job. Their job is not to fill up an orientation class. My recruiter's financial package is based off of who comes, who stays, and who succeeds. And
Mm,
it's a really important thing. And it sounds like a little thing to a driver, but it creates the behavior from
yeah.
the recruiter that's going to benefit the driver. We do not want a recruiter that's just really good at squeezing people into an orientation class. That fosters a relationship of, hey, done, let's move on. You
Yeah.
want that relationship of bring somebody that will have success here.
And that's why we appreciate Josue so much because he's great with relationship building. He's great with relationship building with our drivers and great with relationship building with us. And 10, when the internal recruiters are good with building relationships with the third parties, they tend to treat the drivers well
Yep.
also. When you do one thing right, it where you do in your life one way, you tend to do everything. You all know the saying, I don't feel well. So that's just, I mean, next week I'm going to mess up anyway. It'll be another excuse for next week. But
Like I said, you look radiant. You look
yeah,
radiant. No one could tell the difference.
yeah, but I just feel like crapola, just crap. To
You hide
God.
it well.
But thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you all tuning in, and for the ones that watching this live or whether you watching the replay on YouTube or listening on everywhere else, Apple, Pandora, Spotify, iHeart. Make sure you all follow, subscribe, and all of those things. And we want you all to be safe. But again, we'll see you all again Tuesday, 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. And it'll be November. Turkey time. Were you about
Wow.
to say, Pearson? Already.
Well, November reminds me. You spoke of my wife, and she's going to be worried about me seeing Lisa here. Her birthday is November 2nd, so I'm going to have to remember that.
Yeah, no, Lisa. It was just a name. I just like Lisa, Nicole Jam. You
I
know.
think Lisa from Saved by the Bell. So we're all on the same
Yeah.
page.
Yeah, that's it. But all righty, everybody. Adios. See you next Tuesday. Bye bye.